Hi, it's another Thursday, and I'm Rex Sikes, your host of All Things Rex Worldwide. And my guest today is philanthropist, entrepreneur, author, speaker, Mitzi Purdue. And she's here on All Things Rex as just a really cool person. She's an anti human trafficking advocate, a former rice farmer, a past president of the 40,000 member American Agri-Women, and so much more. And she's going to tell you about that. We're going to talk about her background in detail. She's passionate about encouraging people to be all they can be. In the 90s and the early 2000s, her nationally syndicated column, The Environment and You, was the most widely syndicated environmental column in the US. Recently, she's written a biography of Mark Victor Hansen, the chicken soup for the soul guy. And Hansen is in the Guinness Book of World Records for selling 500 million books. Now, here's what's important: the royalties for Mitzi's book, for Mark Victor Hansen's book, Relentless, goes to Razom, the Ukrainian relief organization with 125,000 volunteer members, mostly Ukrainian Americans. And so we're going to bring Mitzi on right now without any further ado. You're going to love her. I sure do. And here she is, Mitzi Purdue. How are you today, Mitzi? Oh, hold on, Mitzi. We got you muted here. Let's make sure. There you are. Hello.
Okay, you asked how I am. Absolutely ecstatic to be here with you. I love your show, and I'm happy to be on.
And I'm happy to have you back. We did a show a couple years back, Mitzi, Create Your Best Life with Rex Sikes, and you blew us away then. You're going to blow us away now. But before we go too much further, let's just talk a little bit about you, because you are renowned in the world and a world traveler, and you've got your influence in so many different areas. But you also come from the land of hotels and chickens. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, my background is my late father was the co-founder and also the president of the Sheraton hotel chain. And we did sell it when he died 50 years ago. But from the 1930s to the late 1960s, he was the president of the Sheraton hotels. And I grew up with a great curiosity of how he did it, because he started with no employees and he ended up at the end of his days with 20,000 employees. Well, that's
Many of whom he had in your home.
well, that's also true. But then I'm the widow of Frank Purdue. And if you live on the East Coast or some Western more cities, you might know the name Purdue Chicken. Well, that company was started in 1920. Frank Purdue pretty much took it over somewhere around 1940s. And he grew it from no employees to the same number of employees that my late father had, 20,000. And how's that for a coincidence that the two men that I've been closest to each started companies that grew to 20,000 employees, and they never knew each other, so they did it completely independently, but it ended up 20,000 employees.
That is amazing. And one of the cool things that we've talked about before, and knowing you, I mean, you're also an author. You're a columnist. I mean, you've written other books. Um, was the work ethic, the way that both your father and Frank treated employees.
Yeah, my late father said, people have a compulsion to live up to or down to your expectations. And the way he approached that, having that knowledge, he told me one of the secrets there were many, but one of the secrets for why people would stay with him for life and why they'd go the extra mile. And if I can tell a story.
Please.
Okay, he told me that every hotel that he took over, and at the time of his death, he had 400 hotels. Whenever he'd take over a hotel, he'd invite all the employees into the ballroom, and he would know that pretty much every person in that ballroom would be worrying, am I going to keep my job? Because it's just so normal for somebody taking over a company to kick some people out, to clean house. My father knew that they were thinking that, and he also told me that he knew that they probably weren't going to listen to a word he said when they're worried about, whether they're going to have a job at the end of the day. So he told me the first words he ever said in, addressing his new employees was, "I want all of you to keep your jobs. And I want you to keep your job because I know that you know your job better than anybody else in the world. And my job is to give you the resources to show the world just how good you are. And you're going to see," or what I'm about to describe, by the way, I'm Mitzi speaking now, not my father. This would have, for the most part, been happening during the Great Depression, which is when a whole lot of hotels went bankrupt and he bought them. Okay, back to my father addressing his employees. He said, "I believe in you. You're going to see that this hotel, it's been on the verge of bankruptcy. You're going to see that it's going to be the most popular, most financially sound hotel in the city. And we're going to be an example to the rest of the city that things can turn around." Is that not cool?
It is very cool, and what's also very cool about that is that he understood that people aren't going to listen if they're worried. That if they have,
Exactly.
and
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
think it took an awful lot of empathy on his part. But he also told me that, he had said some maybe inspiring words that first day, but he said words alone aren't enough. And so the next day, he'd be spending a lot of money refurbishing the hotel. But the first, because if the hotel's going bankrupt, it's kind of gone to seed. Well, he told me the first money that he ever spent on any hotel he ever bought was on areas the paying public would never see. It would be, for example, the employee dining room, the employee lockers, showers, corridors, just the behind the scenes thing. And so I asked him, "Daddy," because I'm like 8 or 9 asking him questions at this point. "Daddy, why would you put money where you're not going to get any money back? Because the paying public isn't going to see an employee locker." And he answered something I've already said, but that people have a compulsion to live up to or down to your expectations. And this is a way of communicating to them how important I know they are.
Well, that is the part that's truly beautiful, because to communicate to them how important I know that they are. Too often people are marginalized. They're pushed out. They've got a concern or a worry. Their needs aren't addressed. Their concerns aren't addressed because people have an agenda. But your dad really seemed to know how to communicate with people, and then to develop those areas that were important to them first, as opposed to saving that for the last, demonstrates, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. This is, we're in it together, and
Yeah,
that's,
we're in it together. We're a team, and together we're going to turn this place around and be an example to the rest of the city.
oh, that's gorgeous. Well, we'll come back to that in just a second. I want to say that together, those people watching both live, or especially live right now, you can ask questions of Mitzi or leave comments, and you can also certainly like the show and subscribe. You can share the show, and we hope that you will. And if you're watching in replay, go ahead and like and leave comments and share the show as well. It's great that you're here, and we really do appreciate it. Mitzi, returning back to this conversation, you you do so many different things. I want to keep with the theme of what we're doing, but you are an activist, and you are someone who has your heart in the right place. You want to help people. You've been helping people. You've been doing that through your works, through your writing, through your philanthropic activities. But you also travel the world. Oh, so let's tell people right up front where you just came back from.
Woohoo, I would love to. I just had the experience of my life. I was invited to come to Ukraine as a war correspondent. I was invited by the head of the Kiev region police. His name's General Andrei Nebitov. And I came to his attention by the strangest way, but it happened. And here's what happened. I, I often write about how to combat human trafficking. And I'd written an article for Psychology Today. And I'd interviewed a guy who was part of a non-governmental organization that was helping at the border between Ukraine and Poland. And I wrote about, well, his expertise was human trafficking. So for Psychology Today, I wrote his story about what he saw and what needed to be done. Well, the neatest thing happened. That article came to the attention of General Nebitov in Kyiv. And he had written his master's thesis. He's in law enforcement, but he had written his master's thesis on human trafficking. And that's how I came to his attention. Pretty soon I'm on a Zoom call with a general in Ukraine inviting me to come see for myself what I've been writing about. And it took me all of about, I think, an eighth of a second to say, yes, I'm coming.
I bet. Well, and then when you got there, you were...
Well, let me tell you what it's like to be in Ukraine, at least for me, because Ukraine's a very large country and different people are going to have different experiences. But I'll eagerly share some of mine. My first night at the hotel in Kyiv, the hotel just sort of routinely told everybody, you need to have a go bag, G-O, as in go away. You need to have a go bag that has your passport, your money, any medications that you might have, and it's got to be in your hotel room, it's got to be right by the exit door. And the reason why is, if there's an air raid, you probably got 3 minutes from the time of the air raid to make it to the bomb shelter, which is 8 stories down. And I was thinking, oh, that's just too traumatic. It can't really happen. Not me. That night at 2 a.m, an air raid. And I'm going to share with you, allow me to say I'm going to teach you 2 important concepts about air raids. You have to know about the poo and the pooey. Poo is P-O-O, and it stands for, not what you think, it stands for point of origin. Where's the rocket or the cruise missile that's heading towards you? Where did it come from? And the people who are alerting the whole city, they know where it comes from because they've got what I suppose radar for tracking it. But they can't tell the pooey. The pooey is the point of impact. And you would dearly like the pooey not to be where you are. And I was kind of curious. Here's this air raid. And I only had 1 suitcase, and that meant I had a very skimpy nightgown. And I'm hearing the air raid, and my go bag is ready, but skimpy nightgown. I wanted to go to the closet and get the hotel's bathrobe, but I thought 3 minutes, not a good idea. So there I am rushing down in a night. I mean, it comes to my thigh, and it's much more skimpy than I've ever appeared in public in my whole life. But I thought, weighing modesty or maybe getting bombed. I went to the bomb shelter. There were about 20 other people there, me in my skimpy nightgown. And interestingly, everybody got there in 3 minutes. I mean, everybody who ended up there, and there were about maybe 25. And we're all wearing our night clothes, so I guess it didn't matter in the end that I wasn't wearing much. But I was very curious. I'd always wondered about myself. If there's a cruise missile heading my direction, how worried am I going to be? And I found that my professional training as a journalist, as a columnist, as a reporter, completely took over. And I think I can tell you as honestly as I'm capable, I don't think I felt a moment of fear. I was so involved in kind of being aware, seeing who was there, just kind of like being a reporter and figuring out what's going on. I think if somebody told me here that there was a rocket heading my way, I'd be terrified. But there, the reporter personality took over.
Well, I love that because, we talk about, our ability to reprogram our subconscious and to recondition ourselves for success or happiness or to make better decisions or to make money or or any of that. And without training, there's no gaining. We think people too often say no pain, no gain, but that's not the reality. It really is. If you don't train it, you don't have it. And those people that train, like athletes and EMTs and first responders, and those learn how to create a body memory of, I have to act in the moment and be cogent and be responsible and do those things. So training as a journalist in the same fashion, what you said is it just kind of takes over, and that's what you would hope it would do. I mean, that's the point of it.
Yeah, actually, but I was
Now Mitzi has frozen.
because honest as I can be, I did not feel fear. I was just in hyper recording mode.
That's very cool. Well, I mean, you rose to the occasion, and that occasion, you met it with courage. That's very cool and calm.
Well, surprisingly, but nevertheless, that's what happened. But then I want to make a comment again about kind of the emotional state of this. I mean, I'd love to talk about anything that anybody wants to ask me, but I'll share something else. I was there for 5 days. I was the guest of the police department, the Kyiv Police Department. And by the way, it's quite large because it's Kyiv region, which is the police force consists of 6,000 people. So it's big. It extends all the way to the Russian border and includes Chernobyl, by the way. Yes, that Chernobyl, the explosion one, and I've been there. But a comment about kind of the emotional state. During the whole time, I didn't feel fear, even though at every moment, they had assigned to me 4 bodyguards with AK-47s and a plainclothes policeman. So, I mean, they were, the danger was real enough so that they did have 4 bodyguards for me. I didn't feel, for example, jet lag. There's a 7-hour time difference. Never felt it. I never felt sleepy. I was just on. I'm reporting to you how it felt for 5 days. But then when I crossed the border, where there isn't somebody who's out to get you, I'm exaggerating, but where once I'm in Poland and out of a war zone, there's a huge difference in safety. And I remember a feeling of just total crashing. I was exhausted. I could barely get out of bed. And that left me thinking, if I'm so exhausted from 5 days of being in a war zone, what in dear heaven's name must it be like to be there full time? I mean, I can't. Anyway, that was my experience. Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. There was a moment that I.
Yeah, no, I was trying to say that I think the last few words of your last sentence or two got cut off. I didn't hear them.
Oh dear. Well, I'll go back to saying that when I crossed over the border into Poland and its safety, I've never been so tired in my life. It was as if all the adrenaline I'd been living on, just went poof, and it's like it was hard to get out of bed. And the conclusion that I draw from that is the courage, the bravery, the strength, the endurance of the people who are there full time and can't just leave. I can't even fathom how they manage, given that 5 days left me so exhausted.
It's an amazing point. I mean, it's a point not to be lost on us that people who live under chronic threat or stress in any regard, or in a hyper state of awareness because of potential danger in their surroundings, the body, the mind is a brilliant thing, geared for survival. But then the second that survival threat is gone, the body then seeks to replenish itself. So it's amazing what people. I mean, when you say I've done it for 5 days and I was exhausted, imagine what those people who've done it for 3 weeks, 3 months, years, go through. And
but on the other hand, I talked with a social worker about what they were going through, and the reason it came up was it's a 7-hour drive from the border of Poland, a town called Medyka, 7-hour drive from there to Kiev. And one of the people on the van that I was in driving to Kiev was a social worker. And by the way, he's asked me not to use his name because he said if he's in that he could end up in a Russian prison if it's known what he's doing. But nevertheless, here's what he told me. I noticed that there were what seemed to me like an enormous number of car accidents. I mean, just wrecks along the side of the road. Probably at a guess, I mean, this is just eyeballing it. It looked like there were somewhere between 50 and 100 times more wrecks than in that 7-hour drive than I would have seen in an American road. And I commented to him, there's so many wrecks. And he said, here's what we believe is going on. And he has training as a social worker, so he knows what he's talking about. He said that up to a third of the population of Ukraine right now is experiencing symptoms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Because, if you don't know if your home is going to be rubble tomorrow, or if your loved one's going to be alive or not, or if your country's going to be overrun, it leads to PTSD. And he said the consequences of that, well, among other things, that domestic violence is just skyrocketing because somebody who's suffering from PTSD, alas, this is just a fact. They're likely to take it out on somebody near and dear to them. So domestic violence is skyrocketing. And now, I have maneuvered this into talking about what I really want to talk about, law enforcement. Because I was invited by the head of the Kyiv Police Department, the general I've already mentioned, because he said that a lot of the Western world knows about the battles, they know about the refugees, but they don't know about the consequences of an enormous psychological operation, a psyop, that the Russians have inflicted on the Ukrainians. And it's the following. Every time that the Russians would take over a town, almost the first thing they'd do would be to bomb the police department, free the prisoners or empty the prisoners, destroy police communications, destroy phones, cars, everything that they could do. And why is this a psychological operation? Because it's super traumatic to have your country invaded, but it adds to how demoralized you feel if, the rapists, the murderers, the looters, if the arsonists, if they're just running free and you can't call the police because the police station's bombed and all the communications are down. So people who are feeling unsafe anyway feel even less safe. And so again, the story that I don't think has been widely told in the West, particularly in this country, is that Russia, or maybe let's say Putin, deliberately did everything they possibly could to demoralize people, just to make them, and actually it was General Nebitov who told me about this being a psychological operation against the Ukrainian people. He said that the Russians know that the demoralized people, people who are feeling so overwhelmed that they kind of lose their will to fight, they're easier to control. And that was the purpose. That was why the Russians, they knew what they were doing, why they bombed the police stations, destroyed the police cars, police communications.
Wow. Well, we could do hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on this very topic alone.
Good, let's.
Well, we won't do that today, but we will. Let's do that. I mean, I'm happy to come back and do that, whether it's this show or my other show or wherever what we have to do. But I think it's an important topic, and I think the idea of demoralized people or people who are kept off balance continuously by the powers that be or by invading powers is a topic that needs to be addressed.
Well, actually, can I have a PS to that story?
Yes, please do.
Okay, because the general and the social worker both told me that the Russians' goal was to demoralize the people. But I think I think that Ukraine is going to come out of this war. I think they're going to prevail. I think they're going to defeat the Russians, and I have a reason for thinking it. And it all has to do with the fact that I don't think that I mean, people have PTSD, but I don't think they're demoralized. And I have a reason to think this. Am I being rude and running away with the conversation? Bad, Mitzi?
No, please go. Yeah.
Okay.
This is your time. I'm here to hear you.
Okay, and I'm trying to be a good guest and not monologue too much.
You're a fabulous guest.
All right. Well, to continue, why I think the Ukrainians are going to prevail. And I do think that, I am officially a war correspondent, but I think as a woman war correspondent, I saw something that I would bet that most men would miss. And here goes. My first day, I'm in a bombed out police station. There's rubble. There's just, it's discouraging. It's depressing. But one of the women from the police station, I noticed to my surprise that she had a beautiful manicure, nice bright red nails, carefully done. And I'm thinking, under this much stress, it would be almost predictable that, it'd be kind of sackcloth and ashes. It wouldn't be moments of beauty. I saw her the next day and she had a fresh manicure. And this time it was different colored nail polish. It was blue and yellow and blue and yellow, the colors of the flag. And this was so surprising to me that I started noticing every woman, whether it was in a restaurant, a store, an underground part of a park, or the parks, or police stations, offices, everywhere I went, I made it my business to notice women and nail polish. And eyeballing it, my impression is that 90% of the women that I saw had manicures. And this is astonishing to me, again, because I would have predicted, I'm a big believer that what's inside your head is very closely connected with outside. And after I left Ukraine, my next stop after Poland was England. And I had lunch with a professor at Kent University in England. And his particular specialty is terror. People who study this, and he's particularly conversant with what went on in the extermination camps, the death camps during World War II. And he told me a story that helped me make sense of the beautiful manicures. He said during World War II, there was a case of a man who was starving to death, a guy who started out at 200 pounds. By the time the war was over, he weighed 136 pounds. This person would save crumbs of bread, even though he was starving to death, to feed a wild bird that would come into his prison cell each day. And after the war was over, he told people that it was that bird that kept him alive. It was the beauty, the freedom of that bird that could connect him with that. There's something beautiful and wonderful in life, and it's not all this horror and suffering. And he said, that's what kept me alive. Well, the professor told me that people who hunt for beauty, it gives meaning to your life. And in his view, those colored fingernail polishes, the people not having their spirits crushed, still being willing to have moments of beauty in their life, that is a giant fu to Putin. And it might be conscious or it might not be, but they're not letting the invaders crush their spirit.
It's beautiful.
And I saw another example of that. Maybe one of the more moving things that's ever happened in my life, and it's on that subject of beauty. The day that I was in a bombed out police station on the border, 8 miles from Belarus, which is where the Russians came in and invaded. There's this bombed out police station, just depressing. They had some kind of heat bomb that was so powerful that imagine a police station. If you've been in a police station, imagine a bomb so powerful, such high heat, that it destroys all the partitions. It just turns to rubble, desks, paintings, everything. It's just rubble on the floor. It's just a shell of a building. It was a hellscape. But maybe 50 yards from that bombed out building was a rose garden. It had, I'm going to guess, 20 rose bushes, and they were all, they'd all been perfectly tended because they were just flowering. We're talking August, late August. And the roses were beautiful. And you don't get a beautiful weed-free rose garden without putting a lot of effort into it. And the police chief, who was the one, it was his garden, but everybody helped him with it. He picked a rose for me and handed it to me. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, because it's, to my mind, the beauty of maintaining a rose garden when everything around you is so dire and terrible. It's symbolic. It shows we will not be crushed.
That's so beautiful. That is really beautiful. We're going to have to take a break in a couple of minutes and come back. But what powerful examples of human resilience and attitude, and as the nails or the roses or the feeding of the bird, when you look at, say, Viktor Frankl's work and what he said about finding meaning, even in the most dire of circumstances, that a family friend spent much time, and I know this is also other popular stories, but spent time in a war camp, not a concentration camp, but a war camp, thinking, I just want to eat a hamburger when I get home. And that kept that person alive, because he's like, I'm going to have a burger. I am not going to die without having a hamburger back at, Joe's bar or whatever. And so there are examples of that. The idea that somebody would take the time to beautify their nails and they have a welfare becomes that very thing that is not just a wonderful FU to Putin, but a life sustaining task. I mean, the attitude, the energy, the focus that goes into that, finding beauty and having that amount of care when everything else is falling apart, it does demonstrate what people can and oftentimes do, and then sometimes people don't. But we'll talk more about that when we come back on the other side of the break, because this is an important topic, but we're going to have to send some of it for another show. But the idea, you also have a book, and that book is about Relentless. So we're going to want to talk about some of that, because it has to do with mindset that I'm sure that applies to kind of what you're talking about. But I'll let you handle that when we come back for the break. Okay?
A deal.
A deal. All right. So without further ado, here's a word from the Los Angeles Tribune, who's been kind enough to gracious us, or have a show, All Things Rex, on the platform. And I want to thank you who are watching for being here. Be sure to leave comments. Be sure to ask questions. If you have questions, be sure to like and subscribe to the show. And we'll be right back after this message.
Welcome to the Los Angeles Tribune page. Here you will find original news programming, exclusive digital events, and shows that are directly from the community. At the Los Angeles Tribune, we believe in giving a voice to the voiceless. We are proud to be the only national brand to empower everyday people to make a difference. Since 1886, our reputation has been built on truth and responsibility. Thank you for watching and making a difference.
For general inquiries, contact today. Thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Tribune team.
And we're back with Mitzi Purdue. She's a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, an anti-human trafficking advocate, and so much more. All around good person. So I hope you're enjoying the show. Please do share it out. And so we're back, Mitzi. I don't want to just jump to the next topic, but I do think that part of what your work with Mark and doing his biography and the kind of work that Mark has been doing for decades, and you have been doing for decades, is the kind of answer to a lot of what we are seeing in the world, or if we start embodying the kind of mindset that we espouse, in these different works, that people from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, can benefit, and some find it naturally just through circumstances. They haven't read a book, they haven't gone to a workshop, they haven't done anything. They just find it because that's the kind of, humans can rise to the occasion when push comes to shove. So, what beautiful stories! I mean, real life stories of people who find great meaning during troubling times. I mean, thank you for sharing those.
Well, that gets to why I wrote the book at all. And I'm friendly with Mark. I mean, I've known him a while and we talk on the phone a lot. And maybe about a year ago, we're having a conversation about how it's a hurting world. A hurting world. And I reasoned, a lot of people call Mark Victor Hansen mentor to the world, that he's the world's mentor. And I thought, he has so much wisdom. He has enough wisdom so that he has sold, people wanting to know what he has to say, have bought 500 million, with a B, billion books in the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And so I asked him, Mark, has anybody ever written a biography of you? And he said, no, never thought of it. And I said, Mark, I'm a biographer. Can I write your biography? Well, I was really lucky because he had read a biography that I'd written of my late husband, Frank Purdue, and he liked it. So he agreed. Yay. And so I interviewed more than 100 people, finding out. Mark agreed with me right at the beginning that it would be okay to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly, that it would be a story of him, his failings and his successes. And I liked that approach because Mark's an amazingly successful person. There have been years where between book royalties and speeches where he's made $6 million a year. Not bad, right? I mean, a yearly income of $6 million, just not bad at all. But I still think he's an enormously relatable person because, the struggles he's been through. For example, let me start at his worst. I think he was in his mid-20s, possibly 26, and he had just gone bankrupt. He had invested everything that he had, and the Arab oil embargo of, I think it was 1973, meant that he couldn't get the feedstock to build the stuff that he was building. And he owed $2 million that he had no possibility of repaying. And he was broke and penniless. He couldn't even rent a room. He had 4 friends who had rented a house, and he'd sleep on the floor outside the door of one of his friends. And at this point, a sleepless night, his bones touching the hard floor. He's thinking, I failed the people who invested in me. I failed the people who believed in me. I've even failed myself. What good am I to anybody? Why should I go on living? He was suicidal. But then the worst moment of his life kind of led to the best, because in his desperation, he called on God. So 2 a.m, moonlight coming down on his face, he sits up and he asks God, what's my purpose? Why should I go on living? What am I here for? And he got an answer. And it wasn't quite the answer he expected, but it's the answer that worked. He felt that God answered him saying, Mark, what do you want to do? Wow. And just by asking that question, he had the answer that he gave was, what I really want to do is I want to help people. I want to do it through public speaking and communicating. And I want to help ease pain and suffering. And that started him off on a career. And, a lesson from Mark is you can have the vision, but you have to put it into action. It's not enough just to see it. You've got to, so if he wanted to be a speaker, how do you learn to be a speaker? he went to he got tickets to hear a successful speaker, liked what the guy had to say, and came up to him afterwards and said, "I want to be a speaker. Can I be like an apprentice to you?" And the guy said, "No." And Mark said, "No, I really want this. I just want it more than anything in the world." And the guy said, "Are you aware that your chances of making it in this business are 1 in 1,000?" And Mark said, "I don't care. Tell me where to start." And the guy said, I think this is wonderful advice. The guy said, "Don't prepare endlessly. Just plunge into it. Figure out a talk and then give it." Then this guy went away on vacation for a couple of months. When he came back, he found that Mark Victor Hansen had himself signed up for 5 talks a day, I think 7 days a week. I mean, he'd speak at churches, he'd speak at service clubs. He'd just speak. And he had done it often enough so that he developed a tremendous, fluid ability to explain things. And, always the theme is kind of redemptive stories of how you can be all you can be. And, the rest is history. This man sold 500 million books.
He and I had a conversation, and during the conversation, we were talking about, he said something about 500 million books, 500 million. And I said, I know there are people that are sitting here going, "Wow, I'd love to sell a 500 million books." And the way he took my statement, and he said, "You know the story of Roger Bannister?" Of course I do, broke the 4-minute mile. He said, "Let me be your Roger Bannister. I'm not the goal. I'm the starting point." I was like, "Oh, wow, what an incredible answer to give people." Why would, people go, "Well, I don't think I could ever do a 500 million." He goes, "If I could do a 500 million, you can do more than a 500 million." And I was like, this is so generous and so wonderful that somebody would, instead of going, "Yes, I've sold a 500 million, and, gosh, if you could do that, you'd be, on your knees every day." He was like, "Beat me, beat me, surpass me." I'm like, that's what I'm there for. I'm to be broken. It's a record to be broken. And I was just like, wow, that's really, really generous, Mark. That's very cool.
Well, I think he's one of the best human beings I've ever come across, because he's that successful, and yet he's humble, and he'll pay equal attention to the president of the United States or a shoeshine guy. Right. He's just a genuinely good person, and I believe that he lives to serve others. Wow, and it's faith-based. He prays, he tithes, he attributes a lot of his success to prayer. But then there's in addition, the book that sold 500 million copies, 500 million copies, it didn't just drop in his lap, all that success. The book that he and Jack Canfield wrote, it was, to me, what I'm about to say is unbelievable, but it's true. That book was turned down by 143 different publishers. Can you even imagine? And finally, the 144th said, "Okay, I'll take a chance in it, but I don't really believe in it, but I'll give it a try." And he told Mark and Jack Canfield, "I think we might be able to sell 20,000. Instead, that one book sold 15 million.
Beautiful. Wow, well, that's beautiful. But before we go too far, let's talk about the name of your book, and let's see the book, if they can put that up so that you can hold it up, or we might have a photo of it too. There we go. And it's Mark Victor Hansen, Relentless by Mitzi Purdue, and it's a biography of Mark Hansen, whom we're discussing right now with Mitzi. All right, awesome. And they can get that from Amazon. So if you want it, search it, Relentless, Mark Victor Hansen, Relentless by Mitzi Purdue, available on Amazon. But there's more to that, and I'm going to let you tell them. I mentioned it in your introduction, but for those people who get the book, the proceeds,
they're all going to combat human trafficking, particularly in Ukraine. And as a matter of fact, if anybody wants to donate, if you have $10, it would make such a difference, because here's where it will go. In Ukraine, oh my goodness, the human traffickers prey on the vulnerable. And there's so many vulnerable people in Ukraine, particularly women, probably 95% of the women who are trafficked are 95% of the people who are trafficked are women, 5% men.
Yeah.
But there's ways of preventing it, because most of the trafficking happens at the borders of the countries around Ukraine. And the traffickers just wait at the borders, and they'll tell, let's say it's a woman, maybe it's a woman with an 8-year-old daughter. She's tired, she's demoralized, she's probably having some PTSD, she just doesn't have her wits about her. She's finally made it across the border into, let's say, Poland, and she thinks, oh, finally, I'm not going to be bombed, I'm not going to be, I'm safe. And this kindly man comes up to her and tells her, the van that can take you to a nice hotel and where you can get a hot meal and where we can work on getting you a job is leaving in 10 minutes. Come on. And she gets in, and the van is going to take her to a hotel. Yeah, but it's one where she might be raped 30 times that night. So how do you prevent that? By the way, why is she raped 30 times?
Wow.
That doesn't always happen, but I'm told by people who are more familiar with this than I am that raping a woman 30 times is enough, or the goal is to demoralize her so completely that she has nothing left to fight with. She's just, a hollow shell from then on until she dies. And so my goal is, let's prevent this. How do you prevent it? Well, General Nabitov, the guy who invited me to Ukraine, he would like to see the following happen. And right now, what I'm about to describe, there's one of them being built, but we need like 20 of them. If you could have a shelter, it would be formed from a building that maybe it's been abandoned and rehabbed, and for $50,000, you can rehab a building close to the border and maybe have 80 cots in it, or ideally beds, but let's go with cots. And a girl or woman who's about to cross the border, tell her, no, you're tired. You probably, you need a timeout before you make any life-changing decisions. Spend the night in this shelter along with a whole lot of other women who are exactly in your situation. We'll give you hot meals. We'll give you counseling, and police or social workers will warn her what's on the other side, because she probably has no idea that there's somebody on the other side ready to sex traffic her.
Wow.
And they'll tell her, no, don't get into a van with somebody you don't know. Make your way to one of the tents, which has a non-governmental organization that can help you. Don't get in the waiting van if somebody's ready to trap you. If every girl who crosses the border could have a timeout of 24 hours to be warned what's on the other side, they wouldn't be trafficked. So, prevention is just so much easier than trying to restore a woman who's been raped 30 times a night and then is trafficked for 5 years. I mean, that woman, a woman who's been trafficked, she may be able to get back to some degree of normalcy, but wouldn't it be better not to have it happen to begin with? And so if you've got $10 and want to help spare people from just almost unimaginable cruelty and misery, I'm going to give an address to write to, and it's a place where you can make a donation of $10 or more if you choose, but it's uletgroup.org. U for Ukraine. LET stands for law enforcement training. So the letter U, the letter L, the letter E, the letter T, group.org. There, it will tell you more about where the money goes. And it will also, very importantly, it's real easy. You can just press a PayPal button and donate any amount you like. But I would rather have a lot of small donations than one big donation, because one of the super things that I've been doing, I talk with people in Ukraine 2 or 3 times a week. And when I can tell them, there are 50 Americans who really care about what's going on in Ukraine. We're with you. We didn't know how else to help, but we know we can help in this way. It's just the best thing in the world for the morale. of the police to know that these buildings are being built with the help of Americans who care. So, dear friends, $10, youletgroup.org.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So listen, if you're watching and this reaches you in your heart and you want to help the people of Ukraine, you can do two things. You can go to youlet.org. Sorry.
Oh, he's agreeing with you. How nice. Hey, Doug, thank you.
She does. She does this. She's agreeing. You can go to youletgroup.org right there and donate, or they can get the book Relentless through Amazon, and the proceeds of the book also go there. So either way, you win, they win, we all win, when we help curb this just tremendously devastating practice, that the criminal practice that goes on worldwide.
While I was in Ukraine, something that will haunt me for the rest of my life, but I was on the border. To get to Ukraine, I flew to Warsaw and then by car to the Ukrainian border. And we're now in the town of Medica. And I'm with 3 other people. We've rented a car together. And you park the car in, it's a field. It's a muddy, grassy field. And then you walk probably, I'm going to guess 10 or 12 minutes to get to the border. And as I'm walking with my friends towards the border to go into Ukraine, I see maybe a quarter of a mile away a silver Sprinter van. It looks maybe about the size of a UPS van or a mail truck or something. No, a UPS van. And there are these 2 pretty girls. They're talking with 2 guys who are kind of ushering them into the van. And one of the people that I was traveling with at this moment, his specialty is anti-trafficking. And he said, what you're watching right now, those 2 girls, they think they're safe. Nope. They're going to be driven off to a hotel and they're going to be broken. And broken means raped 30 times. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, oh my God, I want to do something. I want to do something. But it's a quarter of a mile away. They've driven away before there's any possibility of doing anything. But then, as the guy who was telling me this told me, don't even look. Don't pay attention. Pretend you don't know what's going on, because this is a $150 billion a year enterprise. There are criminal people there who, if you're making trouble, they would just love to take you and sell your organs. The police can do something about this, but there's absolutely nothing that I can think of that I could have done. But I just hate thinking, I have watched 2 girls and known what's in the future for them. I'm not hearing you.
There's the old saying that for evil to prevail, it doesn't require that anyone do anything. It's that they do nothing.
So I want to do something, but I also want to encourage everybody else to do something, because
and that is the point, that if you want to help this, it requires some action. It does require that someone do something. And the fact that you're highlighting this and making it apparent, and that this is a cause, and that you're here on the show and we're talking about it, but you're also donating the proceeds of Mark's book to this, is that you're taking action. I hope that the viewers who are watching will also take action. And if they aren't willing to donate, and I hope that they are, but if they aren't, at least they can share the show. At least they can get it out there or get the message out to other people. So there's always some action you could take. And it's not because I want you to share the show that's important, but let's make this, this cause a cause to take action.
Thank you. And I'll tell you something, when you press that button and you're $10 or more, if you are inclined, you're going to feel good, because you will know that you're playing a part in erasing or preventing just unthinkable suffering.
I have a friend, by the way, who, his name is Greg. I won't say more than that now, but that's his job. This is what he does. He goes across borders and rescues people who've been trafficked, primarily the South American countries. I don't know if he's done anything in Europe, but I mean, he's done a lot of the South America, Mexico, and different places, and we had dinner, right before COVID, and he was saying, I'm going to be going back and doing a lot of, but the horror stories, the literal, what you've been sharing, and what you witnessed and things like that. we hear it on the news, but we just have no idea of how far-reaching, how pervasive, how frequent this happens, how many people are involved, how many. I remember being in an airport with my girlfriend back in the '80s, early '80s, and they were like, "Hey, you want to model in Japan?" kind of thing. And she thought, I don't know, maybe, okay. And then it turned out that was a big scam there too, is to get, like blonde girls into foreign countries, under the guise that they would be modeling. But so, anybody who could, prey upon somebody does. And so to draw attention to this, and now especially in this area, war-torn Ukraine, I'm very pleased that we're doing the show. I'm really really happy that we're doing this. I didn't even realize it when we were starting how that this would be part of it, but I'm so thrilled that it is.
Well, I'm thrilled because the Ukrainian people, I fell in love with them. I felt, I don't know, it's hard even to express, but they received me. It felt to me like with such gratitude. I can remember having my arms around women that I just met 5 minutes before, where we're just hugging each other and crying. They love that Americans are supporting them. I mean, one of the phrases that I heard is a friend in need. A friend in need is a friend indeed. And Americans, we have a good name in Ukraine right now because we're supporting them so much. But we're supporting them militarily. I want to support the law enforcement that can help prevent trafficking. When we were talking about trafficking, there are other things that the police do that I'm unaware of anybody in the United States who's talking about this. But you remember Chernobyl? Mm-hmm. It was 36 years ago. It was the worst nuclear explosion of a nuclear power plant ever by far, without competition. Fukushima was nothing compared to Chernobyl. It let out so much deadly radiation that there's 1,000 square miles exclusion area where people aren't allowed to enter because it's got highly irradiated stuff. And when the Russians bombed the Chernobyl police station, they did something of just I mean, it's breathtaking how evil what they did was. But in the exclusion area, the police, their major job, as far as I can tell, is to use their fleet of police cars and patrol the 1,000 square mile area. And they know where the scrap metal is that's deadly and that they really don't want to have get out. The scrap metal poachers know that too. Well, the Russians either stole or destroyed almost all of the cars in the entire police fleet of cars. I think there were like 30. And without the cars, the police can't patrol the area. And that means that the scrap metal dealers, they can make a fortune taking away tons at a time of highly irradiated metal. And it goes onto the world market. And here's what radiation sickness can do to a person. And I'm going to give a worst case scenario, but say that highly irradiated or deadly amounts of radiation are used in the world market, and maybe it goes into a door frame or a doorknob or maybe even a car. The irradiation, it's not going to kill you right off, but after years of exposure, it can cause like cancers, tumors, blindness, teeth fall out, just pain all over, and at its worst, death. Well, there's no deterrence now to the scrap metal poachers. They're taking out tons and tons and tons of it, and they're making a fortune out of it. And I can guess that they're probably going to ruin their own lives in the process. But meanwhile, they're making a lot of money, and they're unleashing on the world highly irradiated metal that comes from Chernobyl. And the police can't stop it. In the past, the police would patrol, and if they would find somebody, and they're pretty good at finding them, they can put them in jail for 15 years. Now there's no deterrence. So another thing that I'm just really anxious to do is raise money to to replace those 23 missing police cars.
Wow.
And if anybody wants to donate to that, leave a message to me that you want the money to go to the police cars. Otherwise, I'll assume that you want it to go to the shelters.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, by the way, if you have some nice, wonderful listener who's connected with a like Chevrolet or Ford or General Motors in general, get hold of me, because I think it would be the best public relations thing in the world for one of the car companies to donate 23 police cars. And by the way, the police cars are American made. They're Chevrolet.
Wow.
But can you imagine the good publicity that could come to a car company that donates 23 cars? I mean, it would be global. I'd make sure that it would be global.
Oh gosh, of course. All right. So if you're out there and you're listening or you're watching, and you are anyway connected with a car company or those powers that be in the car company, do reach out and get a hold of Mitzi. You can get us through the show. We'll get Mitzi. You have a website, the way to contact you?
I do. MitziPurdue.com.
There you go.
And the one tricky thing is Purdue is spelled P-E-R-D-U-E. People want to spell it like the university, which has a U in there. That's not me. I'm P-E-R-D-U-E.
Excellent.
Oh, well, yeah, I see that it's written there anyway. So
right.
Yeah, you know how to spell it.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. And so those of you who are watching, please do, if this reaches you in your heart, then please do take action with it. You know how to get a hold of Mitzi, you know how to get the book, you know how to get to youletgroup.org and make a contribution and feel good about it. You know, that's the way to know that you're doing something and helping change the world.
And I make a practice of thanking every donation that comes in. I mean, you'll hear from me if you do. I don't know if that means anything, but nevertheless, I do that.
But that's awesome. It is. I mean, the fact that you're willing to do that is fantastic. Before we're going to have to go in a little while, not right away, but we're going to go in a little while. We're going to go a little bit long. But let's because this is such an important topic, I also do want to come back to what people can do, because there may be people right here in this country who are reacting almost as if they have PTSD, not even being there. You know, they have a response about stuff that goes on in the world. They somehow kind of empathically, you know, then feel bad about it. So, you know, we're talking about Mark Victor Hansen. We're talking about this, like with your dad and Frank Purdue, about the kind of practices they did to help people to when people were worried about their jobs. You know, they came in and said, hey, you know, in order for you to feel more comfortable and for me to be heard, I need to be able to go that extra mile with you. And so what are some of the things that we can do that Mark would say, or you would, or Mitzi Purdue would say, that we can do to help our attitude, our heart, so that we can heal and help others heal? You know?
Well, this brings me back to when the Ukraine invasion first happened. A lot of people that I know felt really depressed. And I have a friend, she's an editor of Psychology Today, and she and I were talking about how bad and helpless we felt. But then the minute we found that we could do something about it, that depression, that anguish sort of got translated into energy of let's do something. So I think my recommendation for anybody is I'm going to make a recommendation, but I'm going to do it by quoting my late husband, Frank Purdue. He used to say, if you want to be happy, think what you can do for somebody else. You want to be miserable, think what's owed to you. Ooh. So my answer of, you know, if the messages that I've been giving or that you just hear all over the world are getting you down, the way to be happy is to think what you can do for somebody else. Just think, you know, maybe it's, I don't know, is there a relative you haven't communicated with for a while? A friend who's ill? Well, I will share with you that I have a purpose in life, and it is, I'm here to increase happiness and decrease misery. And it seems to me that the way of increasing happiness, they're just all around you. That, you know, somebody who needs appreciation or a donation or some kind of service that you can do for other people. Which brings me, if you'll allow me, to a story that guides my life.
Please.
Okay, it has to do with two very opposite people, Napoleon Bonaparte, Mother Teresa. Napoleon Bonaparte, he was at his absolute height at the early 1800s. He was kind of like emperor of the world, or at least the Western world. He had conquered more countries than anybody. He had more wealth, power, status, women, sex, money. I mean, this guy had it all. Did it make him happy? We know, because at the end of his days, when he's in exile on an island in, I guess it's the South Atlantic, I think it's called St. Helena. So there he is. He was once emperor, had everything. Now he's got pretty much nothing. He's writing his diary, and he thinks back in his life, and he says, with all this power, money, status, all the worldly goods that can come your way, he said, I can't count 5 happy days. Wealth, power, money, fame didn't make him happy. All right, let's move on to Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa had a vow of poverty that was so extreme that she owned 4 physical items and no more. 3 of them were the cotton saris that she wore. 1 was the sandals on her feet. 4 physical items. When she wasn't being entertained by heads of state or whatever, she would, quote, eat the bread of the poor. She would eat what a poor person in India would eat. So there she is, dressed in something, it's not quite rags, but it's certainly not status, and sandals, and no other possessions. And her life consists of service to the poor, particularly the lepers. She would help them in their final hours. And a leper, I don't know this firsthand, but I've sure been told that the smell, the vomit, just everything horrible. It's okay. So it wasn't like a fancy court like Napoleon had. So what was her life like? And we don't have to guess because she wrote it in her biography. She said, my life has been a feast of unending joy. So the person whose life was service and giving to others had a life that was a feast of unending joy. And Napoleon couldn't count 5 happy days. A lesson there?
I think so. And he ended up in exile.
And she ended up a saint. Which do you want?
Well,
no happiness, feast of unending joy. I think I'll take that one.
And not only that, I mean, that's really, really poignant. But the fact that she spent her life in service and was courted by heads of state worldwide.
Yes. So it gets right back to my late husband, Frank Purdue. And if you want to be happy, think what you can do for somebody else. Absolutely. You're really into being miserable. Think what's owed to you.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think, you know what, Mitzi, I think we should end right there because that is so powerful and leave people with some food for thought. And we'll come back. We'll do more of these. I mean, I really, really want to spend more time with you and with this cause and make sure that everybody knows, again, that they can go to uletgroup.org. You can go to mitzypurdue.com. And you can go to Amazon and get Relentless, Mark Victor Hansen, Relentless by Mitzi Purdue. And the proceeds will all go to help stop human trafficking in the Ukraine. And also you can make donations and you can contact Mitzi through her website. Mitzi, this has been a wonderful time. And it has been, well spent. And I hope that the people, as I said, that they're agreeing. We'll share out the show. We'll leave comments in replay, and we'll make this important topic one that more people know about. Because you know what, you don't hear about it on the news the way you ought to. We don't know what's going on. We hear about other things. We hear about the war. We hear about Putin, we hear about this, that, and the other thing. But some of these issues, while they do get some time, don't get enough time, and they aren't addressed the way they should be. And I want to thank you for addressing it and taking up the mantle and taking the cause and being a champion for this. I thank you.
I was just going to say, it's been pure joy being with you. Thank you so much.
Well, it's been too long in the coming. It's been a long time, but I do enjoy it, and I thank you so much. And you hang tight. We're going to have to close out the show. I've got to talk a little bit about my book, and then we're going to, I'll be catching right up with you after the show. So thank you, Mitzi. Thank you for watching All Things Rex Worldwide. And that's what it says. You can help prevent human trafficking, Mitzi's cause. Well, you don't want to help prevent a human Mitzi. We know what you intend. We'll get it fixed out there, Mitzi. You can help prevent human trafficking, Mitzi's cause. You can donate to the cause and make it happen. So I know that they're working hard in the background to get that fixed. So without any further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my book, and I want to thank you for being here, Mitzi. All right. Well, that was Mitzi Purdue. We'll get that back up there where you could donate to Mitzi as was intended. But I got to tell you about Life on Your Terms, the book I wrote a while back with the idea that it would help people to increase their ability to live happily, to make better decisions, to be healthier, wealthier, and in all areas of your life, whether it's your relationships, your own personal happiness, your pocketbook, or your health. So it's a blueprint. It's step-by-step, bite-sized pieces that you can apply to accomplish just that. And when you get the book from Amazon, if you go to Amazon and get the book softcover or the hardcover, I want to give you a bonus training on mastery and how you master any skill, talent, or ability to live your life more successfully. It's called the Mastery Loop. It's based on whole brain. It's based on the whole brain learning and accelerated learning. But it's actually how the brain, our subconscious mind works. And when you know and understand how it works and work with it, you can accelerate the rate at which you're able to accomplish things, and you can live a far happier, healthier, wealthier life with more fun and more delight and with greater ease. And so with that, go get the book and then be sure to donate to Mitzi's cause. Get the book Relentless on Mark Victor Hansen by Mitzi Purdue. I mean, got a lot of things to do here, but at any rate, and be sure to spread the word about this important cause. We'll be back next time with David Fagan. We've got an upcoming summit in October. It's a neuroscience summit. And there you go. And it's got a number of speakers, including Joe Vitale, Michael Beckwith, Sharon Lecter, and others. So you're going to want to attend, of course. The dates are the October 20th through the 23rd. And that will be brought to you by Top Talent Agency and the Los Angeles Tribune. So we want you to know that you can attend that and find out more about that from the Tribune. You find out more about that on the show. David is going to be here from Top Talent next week. He's the guy over there on the far right of the photo, and he's one of the sponsors of the summit. So I want to thank you for being here. And as I say, if you consider anything a problem, it's a problem. And if you consider anything a blessing, it's a blessing. It's all a matter of how you look at it. So look at it wisely and celebrate everything. We'll see you next time. Thank you.